My name is Bethany Rose. I'm 38 years old, and on March 22nd, I collapsed in the church parking lot and died. I was a Sunday school teacher at Riverside Baptist for 12 years, married to my husband David for 15 years, mom to twin girls, Emma and Grace. I thought I had it all figured out. I read my Bible every morning, tithed faithfully, volunteered at the food bank. I was what everyone called a good Christian woman. But that day, in the parking lot, everything I thought I knew about faith was about to crumble. I remember walking to my car after leading the children's choir practice. The kids had been singing "Jesus Loves Me," and their little voices still echoed in my head. I felt this sharp pain in my chest, like someone was squeezing my heart with both hands. Then my vision went white. I heard my car keys hit the concrete. That's the last thing I remember from this world. The next thing I knew, I wasn't in my body anymore. I could see myself lying there on the asphalt. Mrs. Henderson was kneeling beside me, her hand shaking as she dialed 911. Pastor Williams was running toward us from the church doors, but I felt so detached from it all, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. Then came this pulling sensation. Not painful, just irresistible, like being drawn by invisible hands towards something I couldn't see yet. The parking lot, the church, even the sky started fading away. Everything got quiet, deeper quiet than I'd ever known. I found myself standing in what looked like a vast meadow. The grass was greener than anything on earth, and there were colors I'd never seen before, colors that don't have names. The air itself seemed to hum with life, and that's when I saw him walking toward me. He wasn't what I expected, not the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus from my childhood Bible. His skin was olive-toned, his hair dark and shoulder-length. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. They were like looking into the deepest well of love and sorrow all at once. When he smiled, I felt every cell in my body relax for the first time in years. But what struck me most was the way the very ground seemed to respond to his steps. Where he walked, tiny flowers bloomed instantly and faded just as quickly, like the earth was trying to worship him. The light around him didn't come from above, it came from within him, soft and warm like candlelight, but infinitely brighter. "Bethany," he said, and his voice was like hearing my own name for the first time. "My precious daughter." I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. How do you talk to the creator of the universe? How do you even begin? "You don't have to say anything," he said gently, and I realized he could hear my thoughts. "I know your heart. I've always known your heart." The strange thing was, I didn't feel judged. Even though he knew everything, every secret, every failure, every time I lost my temper with the girls or spoken harshly to David, I felt completely safe. It was like being wrapped in a blanket of pure acceptance. "I want to show you something," he said, extending his hand toward me, "something that breaks my heart every single day." When I took his hand, the meadow dissolved around us. We were suddenly standing in what looked like a courtroom, but not any earthly courtroom I'd ever seen. The walls stretched up so high I couldn't see the ceiling. There were beings of light everywhere. Angels, I realized, but their faces looked so sad. "Look," Jesus said, pointing ahead. In the center of the room was a massive scale, the kind you see in paintings of justice. On one side was a golden plate that gleamed with holy light. On the other side was a dark, twisted plate that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. "Every hour," Jesus said, his voice heavy with grief, "millions of people who call themselves my followers add weight to the wrong side of this scale." I watched in horror as streams of what looked like black sand poured onto the dark side. With each grain that fell, the scale tipped further away from the light. "What is that?" I whispered. "Unforgiveness," he said simply, "the sin that sends more of my children to hell than any other." My heart sank. I thought about all the times I'd harbored resentment. My sister who borrowed money and never paid it back. The woman at church who'd criticized my Sunday school lessons. David's mother who always found fault with everything I did. "But Lord," I said, "I'm a good person. I serve you. I teach children about your love." Jesus turned to look at me, and I saw tears in his eyes, real tears. "Bethany," You can teach about my love all you want. You can sing hymns and pray eloquent prayers and give money to the poor. But if you refuse to forgive, you're building your own prison. He waved his hand, and suddenly I could see into the hearts of people all around the world. I saw a man sitting in a pew, singing worship songs while mentally rehearsing all the ways his ex-wife had wronged him. I saw a woman leading a prayer circle while nursing a grudge against her pastor from 15 years ago. I saw teenagers at youth group laughing and praising Jesus while plotting revenge against classmates who'd hurt them. They think they're saved, Jesus said softly. They believe in me. They know I died for their sins, but they've never truly understood what forgiveness means. And their unforgiveness is like acid, eating away at their souls. I was crying now because I could see myself in every single person. He showed me how many nights had I lain in bed, replaying arguments and nursing old wounds. How many times had I said, I forgive you with my mouth, while keeping a detailed record of wrongs in my heart? The thief on the cross next to me, Jesus continued, he had minutes to live, but he chose forgiveness, even forgiving the other thief who mocked him. That's why he joined me in paradise that very day. But I watch people sit in church for decades, knowing my word, claiming my name, while their hearts grow harder and harder with each offense they refuse to release. He showed me more. I saw marriages crumbling because spouses kept score of every slight. I saw children growing up in homes where parents modeled bitterness instead of grace. I saw entire churches splitting apart because members couldn't let go of past hurts. This is why I said, if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses, Jesus said. It's not that I'm keeping score. It's that unforgiveness creates a barrier in the human heart that my love cannot penetrate. How can I forgive someone who refuses to extend that same mercy to others? I thought about my own life, all those small resentments I'd collected over the years like poisonous pearls. The way I'd smiled and acted loving while keeping careful mental lists of who owed me apologies. But it's so hard, Lord, I said. People really do hurt us. The pain is real. I know, he said, and his voice was infinitely compassionate. I felt every betrayal, every rejection, every moment of abandonment when I hung on that cross. Peter denied me 3 times. Judas sold me for 30 pieces of silver. The crowds who shouted Hosanna on Sunday were screaming crucify him by Friday, but I forgave them all. Even while the nails were being driven into my hands, I said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He paused, and I felt the weight of his words settling into my soul. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. He continued, it's about releasing the poison from your own heart. It's about trusting me to handle the justice while you choose freedom. I saw the black sand still pouring onto the dark side of the scale. Each grain represented someone claiming to love Jesus while harboring unforgiveness. Soccer moms who hadn't spoken to their neighbors in years over property line disputes, business owners who attended church on Sunday while plotting to destroy competitors who'd wronged them, pastors nursing grudges against former church members. Every single one of them thinks they're going to heaven, Jesus said. They've said the sinner's prayer. They've been baptized. They know all the right words. But when they stand before my Father, their unforgiveness will be like a wall between them and His mercy. The vision shifted, and I saw the other side of the scale, the golden plate. Light was flowing onto it like liquid sunshine. These are my children who have truly learned to forgive. Jesus explained, they've been hurt just as deeply, but they choose to release it. Every act of forgiveness adds weight to this side. I watched a woman forgive her husband for an affair. I saw a man choose to bless the coworker who'd stolen his promotion. I witnessed a mother extend grace to the drunk driver who'd killed her son. With each act of forgiveness, brilliant light poured onto the golden side of the scale. This is what moves my heart, Jesus said, and I could hear the joy in his voice now when my children choose to love like I love, to forgive like I forgive. These are the ones who will hear, well done, good and faithful servant. I was sobbing now, thinking of all the people I needed to forgive. My sister, my mother-in-law, the church member who'd questioned my teaching methods, even David for all those little irritations that I'd let build up over the years. Lord, I want to change, I said, but how do I forgive when the hurt runs so deep? You start with a choice, he said gently. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a decision. You choose to release the debt. You choose to stop rehearsing the offense. You choose to bless instead of curse. And every time the pain comes back, because it will, you make the choice again. He touched my shoulder, and I felt power flow through me. Not my own power, but his. When you go back, Bethany, and you will go back, I want you to tell people this. Unforgiveness is the silent killer of the church. It's the sin that looks respectable. People will confess to struggles with lying or losing their temper, but they'll hold on to grudges for decades and think nothing of it. I nodded, still crying. Tell them that love is not a feeling, it's a choice, and forgiveness is love in action. Tell them that every day they choose unforgiveness, they're choosing to agree with hell instead of heaven. They're partnering with the enemy instead of with me. The courtroom scene began to fade, and we were back in the beautiful meadow. But everything felt different now. I felt lighter, like someone had been sitting on my chest for years and had finally stood up. I don't want to leave you, I said. Can't I just stay here? It's so peaceful, so perfect. Jesus smiled but shook his head. Your daughters need their mother. David needs his wife. And there are people you haven't forgiven yet. People you haven't told about this revelation. Your work on earth isn't finished. But what if I fail again? What if I go back to holding grudges? Then you repent and choose forgiveness again, he said. Sanctification is a process, not a one-time event. But now you know the truth, and the truth will set you free. He began to walk away, and I felt that pulling sensation again, but in the opposite direction this time, back toward earth, back toward my broken body on the church parking lot. Wait, I called out. How will I remember all of this? I'll remind you, he said, his voice growing distant. Every time someone hurts you, every time you're tempted to hold a grudge, I'll bring this moment back to your mind. And you'll have to choose, will you partner with me in forgiveness, or will you add more sand to the dark side of the scale? The meadow dissolved completely. I felt myself being pulled back, back, back. And then I gasped. The first thing I noticed was pain, incredible pain in my chest. Then the bright Florida sun making me squint. EMT voices above me. We got a pulse. She's back. I tried to sit up, but gentle hands pressed me back down. Ma'am, you need to stay still. You've been unconscious for over 20 minutes. We thought we'd lost you. 23 minutes. I'd been gone for 23 minutes, but it felt like hours, days even. At the hospital, the doctors were amazed. No brain damage, no heart damage. They couldn't explain it. Sometimes these things just happen, one cardiologist said, shaking his head. You're very lucky. But I knew it wasn't luck. It was grace and a mission. The first person I called when I got home wasn't David or my mom. It was my sister Linda, the one who'd borrowed $3,000 from us 5 years ago and never paid it back. The one I'd been giving the cold shoulder to ever since. Linda, I said when she answered, and my voice was shaking. I need to tell you something. I forgive you. About the money. About everything. And I'm sorry for how I've treated you. I love you. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she started crying. Bethany, I've wanted to make things right for so long. I just didn't know how. That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I had similar conversations with my mother-in-law, with church members I'd clashed with neighbors I'd held grudges against. Some were receptive, others weren't. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that I was finally free. And I started telling people about what I'd seen, about the scale, about the black sand of unforgiveness that was dragging millions of Christians toward hell every single hour. Some people got defensive, but you don't understand what they did to me, they'd say. And I'd think about Jesus hanging on the cross, forgiving the very people who put him there. Others broke down and confessed they'd been carrying bitterness for years, even decades. A woman in my Sunday school class admitted she'd been angry at God since her miscarriage 15 years ago. A man in our church revealed he'd never forgiven his father for abandoning the family when he was 12. Each time someone chose forgiveness, I thought about that golden side of the scale getting heavier. Each time they held onto their grudges, I saw the black sand pouring down. The truth is, we think we're getting back at people when we refuse to forgive them, but we're really just poisoning ourselves. We're building our own prisons and throwing away the keys. And worst of all, we're disqualifying ourselves from the very mercy we claim to believe in.